elsewhere, although some mist and fog to wake up to on Friday morning because of the increased humidity, and a fairly mild night for sleeping, 16 Celsius, for example, in the capital. Now, we've got that mist around first thing across central and some eastern parts, but it will soon clear. Meanwhile, for northern England, Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland, some cloud and some showery rain. The rain most persistent over north and west Wales, northwest England, as well as western Scotland, turning to showers by the afternoon across Northern Ireland and not quite reaching eastern Scotland, where it will be warm. Further south, though, plenty of sunshine for central and southern parts of England and Wales, with highs into the mid to high 20s. Then, into Friday evening, some of that showery rain crosses central parts, so perhaps affecting the North Midlands into eastern parts of England, Wales as well, largely avoiding the far south and southeast, and some more persistent and occasionally heavy rain affecting much of Scotland. But wherever you are, it's going to be a muggy night with temperatures a couple of degrees higher compared with previous nights, 18 Celsius in some spots. And Saturday morning starts off with that warmth, but also with plenty of sunshine for the south and southeast. Further north, a lot of cloud cover, I think, and for much of Scotland and Northern Ireland, we're going to see some showery rain, turning to hit and miss downpours into the afternoon. But by later Saturday into Sunday, we're going to see further spells of persistent rain into the northwest. Some gusty winds associated with this as well, whilst the southeast is increasingly sunny on Sunday, with temperatures reaching 30 to 33.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. And breaking tonight, after a debris field was discovered within the search area for the missing Titanic sub. In the last hour, the US Coast Guard has confirmed the news that the whole world was dreading.
This morning, an ROV, or remote operated vehicle, from the vessel Horizon Arctic discovered the tail cone of the Titan submersible approximately 1,600 feet from the bow of the Titanic on the seafloor.
So, as the story of these daring adventurers comes to a tragic end, why has the left been attempting to politicise this tragedy?
The super rich can spend £250,000 on vanity jaunts 2.4 miles beneath the ocean, then they're not being taxed enough.
Well, in my digest next, I'll celebrate, not demonise, the lives of these brave fallen explorers. Then I'll get the reaction of my superstar panel. And tonight, I'm joined by Carol McGiffin. Making his debut, the former Conservative Cabinet Minister Ranil Jayawardena and Amy Nicol. Also on the way tonight, as writer and politician Sir Trevor Phillips launches a stinging attack on the Sussexes, saying they squandered a golden opportunity to showcase the UK's inclusivity. Is he right that, quote, no one cared about Meghan's race? Top political and social commentators Joanna Jarju, Samantha Smith and Chris Rose all do battle in the clash. Also breaking tonight, a bombshell new YouGov poll has Meghan Markle's approval rating at an all-time low. And after a week from hell for the Duchess, including a Spotify dumping and Dior snub, is Her Montecito Majesty all out of star power? My royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Richard Fitzwilliams, give their expert opinions. And after Elton John came to the defence of Philip Schofield this week, his partner David Furnish has also claimed the ex This Morning presenter is a victim of homophobia.
I think what was horrifying to watch was what I would call a disproportionate response within certain levels of the media, where it was written about over and over and over, where they were piling on for days and then weeks.
So has Schofield really been targeted simply for being gay? Fleet Street icon Calvin McKenzie is outraged by that assertion. He hits back in Uncancelled. Also on the way, the Bank of England sparks an economic tidal wave with a interest rate rise to 5%. So with millions of Brits now facing financial ruin, is this Rishi Sunak's Mensis Horribilis, the month when his government's house of cards finally comes crashing down? We'll debate that damning assessment from the Sunday Telegraph's editor in the Media Buzz. And watch out, woke folk of the world, J.K. Rowling and Elon Musk have joined forces to combat the term cisgender. Former Tory Minister Anne Widdecombe joins me to react as she dares the trans lobby to call her a cis woman. You'll also get a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages as they drop as ever. New Greatest Britain, Union Jackass, last of the week before the night is out. This is Dan Wootton tonight. Let's go. This is GB News, Britain's news channel, and breaking tonight. The story that's gripped the world has concluded with the tragic news we all feared most. It can be confirmed as we come on air that the missing Titan submarine has indeed been lost at sea, despite the heroic efforts of brave multinational rescue teams who worked tirelessly to bring home those 5 souls on board. Now, a statement released by OceanGate, the sub's owner, read tonight: "We now believe that our CEO, Stockton Rush, Shahzada Dawood and his son Suleiman Dawood, Hamish Harding and Paul-Henri Nargeolet have sadly been lost. These men were true explorers who shared a distinct spirit of adventure and a deep passion for exploring and protecting the world's oceans. Our hearts are with these 5 souls and every member of their family during this tragic time. We grieve the loss of life and joy they brought to everyone they knew." I'll have a special digest on this tragedy straight after all the latest on the developing story with our Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you. Well, that top story tonight, more detail on that for you now. The expedition company of the Titan submersible OceanGate, as you heard say, they believe the pilot and 4 passengers on board are likely to be confirmed dead. OceanGate pilot and CEO Stockton Rush, UK citizens Hamish Harding, Shahzada Dawood and his son Suleiman, and French national Paul-Henri Nargeolet lost contact on Sunday as the submersible headed down under the ocean 12,000 feet below to view the wreck of the Titanic. The US Coast Guard say their bodies may never be recovered. Remotely operated vehicles will remain at the scene, we understand, to help develop a wider timeline of what may have happened to the submersible. Rear Admiral John Morga says the 5 pieces of debris found in the search for the missing sub earlier today were consistent with a catastrophic loss of the pressure chamber.
An ROV, or remote operated vehicle, from the vessel Horizon Arctic discovered the tail cone of the Titan submersible approximately 1,600 feet from the bow of the Titanic on the seafloor. The ROV subsequently found additional debris. In consultation with experts from within the Unified Command, the debris is consistent with the catastrophic loss of the pressure chamber.
Well, following that sad news tonight, today's other top story, the Bank of England today increased the interest rate by 0.5 percentage point to 5%. That's the highest rate in 15 years as the bank tries to tackle ongoing inflation. The bank's governor, Andrew Bailey, went online to say inflation is still too high and must be dealt with. But he added, if we don't raise rates now, it could be worse later. It's the 13th time in a row the bank has increased the interest rate. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, says it's 13 years of government failure. But speaking to warehouse workers in Kent earlier on today, the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, said there's no easy fix, but halving inflation was still his top priority.
Rooting out inflation is not easy. It requires difficult decisions, doesn't happen overnight. But if we don't get on top of it, it would just get worse and it would last longer. And that's not going to do anyone any favours. It's not going to be good for you and your families in the long run. And even though it means I have to make some difficult decisions, that's the type of Prime Minister I am, because I want to do the right thing for you and your families in the long term.
20,000 railway workers have said they'll go on strike today. They're going to do it for 3 days next month. The RMT union has announced industrial action on the 20th, 22nd and 29th of July. The strikes coincide with major sporting events, with the Open and the Ashes both set to be affected. And at Royal Ascot today, one particular horse caused a bit of an upset, winning the Norfolk Stakes at odds of 150 to 1. Valiant Force, ridden by jockey Ross O'Ryan, becomes the longest-priced winner in Ascot racing history. Meanwhile, one of the King and Queen's horses, Desert Hero, won the King George V Stakes in a photo finish. Charles and Camilla looking ecstatic as they watched their 18 to 1 thoroughbred claim victory. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and the TuneIn app. This is GB News.
It's the agonising news the whole world had been dreading. Tonight, the Titan V have sadly been lost after debris was found, including the OceanGate sub's landing frame and rear cover. Details of the devastating discovery were revealed in the last hour from Boston by the 1st Coast Guard District Commander, Rear Admiral John Morga.
This morning, an ROV, or remote operated vehicle, from the vessel Horizon Arctic discovered the tail cone of the Titan submersible approximately 1,600 feet from the bow of the Titanic on the seafloor. The ROV subsequently found additional debris. In consultation with experts from within the Unified Command, the debris is consistent with the catastrophic loss of the pressure chamber. Upon this determination, we immediately notified the families. On behalf of the United States Coast Guard and the entire Unified Command, I offer my deepest condolences to the families.
That was not what we wanted to hear. All week, We've been holding our collective breath and hoping for an unlikely miracle, especially with the news that SOS signals and loud banging had been detected. But there have also been concerns raised about whether the Titan was really up to such a dramatic expedition, especially with this new video released today of a previous voyage suffering a communications failure.
After 1,000 meters, Scott, the pilot, detected a failure in the communications system.
But I'm not hearing a transmission on this. So
No, you hear nothing?
Yeah. What's weird is I'm getting the pressures, right? I know I'm communicating with that.
It is vital that we be able to communicate with the surface, otherwise we can get lost and drift in the middle of the ocean.
One last shot on Kongsberg.
Yeah, okay. SOS is away.
Okay.
While the weights are thrown, something happens.
Oh, they
Drop weight for having the carbon. There is something strange.
In the weeks ahead, there will be time for a post-mortem on what Chief Executive Stockton Rush, who went down with his sub, may have got wrong. But to see the hate-filled left exploiting this tragedy to try and stop future pioneering missions by rich explorers has been sickening to me. Like the left-wing agitator, Ash Sarkar.
If the super rich can spend £250,000 on vanity jaunts 2.4 miles beneath the ocean, then they're not being taxed enough.
How utterly repugnant. She was joined by the Labour councillor Freddie Bailey.
A billionaire who is missing at sea viewing the Titanic is front-page news. 300 migrants die in a boat off the coast of Greece, and the British media talks about them like they aren't human.
Such attempts to politicise this tragedy should not be dignified. It says everything about their side of politics. So tonight, my thoughts are with the families of Rush, as well as the London Pakistani Shahzada Dawood. He was 48. His son Suleiman, just 19 years old, a student at Strathclyde University in Glasgow. The French Navy commander, Paul-Henri Nargeolet, who was part of the first human expedition to the Titanic in 1987. He was in his 70s. And of course, the successful British billionaire, Hamish Harding. And I think it's essential that the brave private explorers and adventurers who spend their own fortunes to conquer the globe and drive forward humanity are not demonised because of this terrible tragedy. But to respond now, my superstar panel, former Loose Women star, the broadcaster and columnist Carol McGiffin, the former Conservative Cabinet Minister making his debut tonight, Ranil Jayawardena, and the author and broadcaster Amy Nicole. So Ranil, this was the news that we were all dreading. Of course, it was becoming particularly inevitable. We knew that the oxygen supply ran out at some point between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. this morning. But from what we're hearing, it doesn't actually look like the Titan V had to suffer, which is maybe a very good thing.
Yeah, I mean, first, my thoughts are with the families as well. And that's really what, in, I'd say, most people's minds right now, that, you know, these are people's fathers, brothers, and so on. And it is, of course, a tragedy. But the one thing that I guess their families can hold on to is they died doing what they loved.
Yeah.
Being adventurers, exploring, you know, literally, you know, new depths for them. And thankfully, it seems that they didn't suffer at the time. But I agree with you. I just don't know what possesses some people to bring politics into this tragic event. It's wholly unnecessary. And, you know, frankly, I think some of these people just need to look at themselves in the mirror and go, well, what is it that makes me want to politicise something so human, so personal?
But do you even feel like that about what the Labour councillor said? Because Ash Sarkar's one thing, I can completely park that hot take at the door. I'm not on board with that at all. But it is the case that we have got to the point where when 500 migrants are drowned off the coast of Italy, we do find it unremarkable now. That the reason that the Titan expedition has got so much attention is because it is undeniably, amazingly remarkable what's happened there. It's beyond imagination what they went through.
Well, I want to say a couple of things about this. Firstly, we've got to stick to facts. And 78 people have been confirmed in that terrible loss of life.
But that's not
off the coast of Greece.
That's one of
78
many
people have been
this
confirmed
month.
dead. It's possible that there were more, but there are 78 confirmed bodies. You just said 500 people have died. So let's keep everything into perspective. That is a massive story. It received a lot of coverage, but there is a fundamental difference. Those poor souls had died. And, of course, the people who were trapped undersea in the second Titanic tragedy, there was the potential that they were going to be found. But, Carol McGiffin, it just feels really wrong for me to even make this unnecessary comparison.
Well, that's what the left do, though, isn't it? I mean, they always start to attack people because they have more than them. I don't know. I mean, it's just... It's unbelievable. And also, to say that that story wasn't covered about the migrants, it was.
There have been multiple incidences of it, and it did not take up the time. The time and resources applied to the Titan, which I completely agree.
Hang on a minute. The migrants get as much attention when something goes wrong as this has.
Yeah. No, they don't.
Okay, but this is
on my way here.
This
I
is
saw
more
a
of a
picture.
story because it's more unusual.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. But Carol, you've just made my point for me.
But also, it's a first. It's a first.
Yeah, I know. And every single migrant tragedy should be treated...
You're being intellectually dishonest to suggest that deaths in the Channel, because that's what actually we're talking about here...
become unremarkable.
...do not become big news, because they do. They really do. But also, Ranald, I really think that the point that really shocked me as well with Ash Sarkar is this suggestion that we should not want our billionaires to innovate and to spend their own money. And surely if there's one thing that we've learned over the past few years, it's that the government actually doesn't spend our money responsibly. And it's absolutely imperative that our explorers, that our adventurers are allowed to continue these groundbreaking expeditions.
But that wasn't a ground...
Hang on. I mean, look, you know, the thing is, if people have made their money lawfully, of course they should be able to spend the money how they wish, whether that's exploring the deep sea or jumping out of a plane or whatever else it is they want to do, go into space. And if we look at how innovation has occurred in all of human history, it's about people pushing the bounds, and everyone benefits from that. You know, the only reason we have a microwave is because space exploration was a thing in the first place.
Exactly.
We should encourage
But you can't
and Amy,
make
surely you
make the
accept
link here.
that billionaires
You said I am being
are spending
intellectually
great money
disingenuous.
on great projects, whereas our government very often fritters away our cash, like over the COVID period.
I think you set a very dangerous precedent when you say that billionaires who make completely their own choices and their own priorities can prioritise better than governments. I think that's a tricky road you're taking there.
Well, look at electric cars, for example. I mean, Tesla...
But this is money that they have earned.
Billionaires...
It's their money,
and they can invest into...
The government doesn't earn its
dodgy
money,
regimes,
it just takes it.
things that don't need to be prioritised. They can tip the balance.
But look at what Elon Musk has done. You know, with Tesla, he's driven forward electric vehicles himself. No government investment. He's put that forward, and it's transformed our sort of daily experience.
But let's not pretend that this Ocean Gate company was this innovative, necessary, explorative. This is a company that was taking $250,000 off of people, taking advantage of their profit, of their wealth, in my opinion.
No one said it was necessary, Amy.
Did you think it was a good use of money to go in that tin can?
Personally, I can't think of anything I want to do less. I mean, they must have... I know everyone keeps saying they didn't suffer, but... You don't know. I mean, it must have been absolutely terrifying being stuck down there and not knowing where you are, knowing that the air is running out. So, you know, they made the choice to do that. They must have known the dangers.
The waiver had mentions of death on the first 4 pages.
But so does it before you go in to get a routine operation. You know, life is full of risks. And all I'm saying is that it's very disturbing to me to see the left try and use this terrible tragedy as an example of let's not innovate. Let's not encourage our billionaires
No, they deserve to die because they've got loads of money. That's all right. Leave them alone. They're not poor enough for us to say. It's just disgusting.
They simply observed the amount of energy dedicated to this tragedy, which has been fascinating and disturbing in equal measure. Every single migrant boat tragedy should have the same attention.
Amy and Cal. Ranald Jayawardena, Carol McGiffin, my superstar panel, and they are with me all night. But coming up, as J.K. Rowling And the aforementioned Elon Musk joined forces to combat the term cisgendered by branding it a slur. Former Tory Minister Anne Widdecombe dares the trans lobby to call her cis. I wouldn't want to take on Widdy, that's for sure. See what she has to say later. But up next in the clash, the former head of Britain's Equality Commission, Sir Trevor Phillips, says the Sussexes have squandered a golden opportunity to showcase the UK's inclusivity. So is he right that no one cared about Meghan's race before she made it an issue? Top political and social commentators Joanna Jarju, Samantha Smith and Chris Rose do battle in mere moments. What do you think? Dan at GBNews.com voted our poll at GB News. The results and the clash after the break.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel. Anne Widdecombe and Lady Colin Campbell coming up, but it's time now for The Clash. And speaking 75 years on since the first of the Windrush generation arrived in the UK, Sir Trevor Phillips has hailed Britain as the most welcoming country in Europe, regardless of what Harry and Meghan might say. In a stinging attack on the Sussexes, the respected writer and politician, former head of the Equalities Commission, told the Daily Mail today they completely squandered a golden opportunity to show everyone what this country is really like in matters of race. A country where no one disturbs themselves about a marriage across the lines of race and ethnicity. They constructed this completely ridiculous and unpleasant story about how maltreated they were, which frankly no one believes. No one cared about Meghan's race. They could have made things different for millions of people and they chose not to. That's unforgivable in my book. That's a sin. So do you agree with Sir Trevor? Is he right that nobody in Britain actually cared about Meghan's race, despite what she has to say? Email me, dan@gbnews.uk. Vote in our poll at GBNews on Twitter. But to help you make up your mind, I'm joined by three top political and social commentators, Joanna Jaju, Chris Rose and Samantha Smith. So, Samantha, let me start with you on this. He's right, isn't he? He's completely and utterly correct.
I couldn't agree more. Trevor Phillips is just echoing what everyone else in the general public has been saying for years. People didn't have a problem with Meghan Markle because of the colour of her skin. It was entirely due to the fact that she showed utter contempt towards our culture, our customs, and the British public in general. No one, quite frankly, cared about the fact that Meghan Markle was mixed race. If anything, she was welcomed by the general public and by the royal family. A key example of this was the fact that Prince Charles was willing to walk her down the aisle, was ready and suggested and offered to walk her down the aisle after she fell out with her father. He said, I want to walk you down the aisle. I want to welcome you into our family properly. I don't want you to be by yourself on your wedding day. This, in my opinion, is a shining example of the royal family's tolerance and willingness to welcome Meghan Markle into the fold. When it comes to the British public, I would say, as the daughter of a first-generation Afro-Hispanic immigrant, she has never shared anything other than positive sentiments towards the UK and our tolerance and our inclusivity and our equity. For Meghan Markle, she outstayed her welcome because she was, frankly, completely exploitative and manipulative of the British public. She used the race issue to garner support when she thought that she wanted to make her break back to the US and start her superstardom as an A-list celebrity. And yet, even over the pond, they are beginning to grow weary of her constant banging on
that's true.
race politics.
That's very true. I mean, Joanna Jaju, I have to say, I loved what Trevor Phillips said on this, because it's what I've been saying for the past many years. That day, Joanna, when Harry and Meghan got married, was, I think, the most exciting, positive day for this country since the London 2012 Olympics. We celebrated this marriage. We actually loved the fact that Meghan was mixed race and thought that she was going to shake up the royal family. What we hated was the way that she acted afterwards. Do you agree with Sir Trevor Phillips?
Absolutely not. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend as if the wedding day of Meghan and Harry wasn't a joyous day for the entire country. It was, and everybody did celebrate. But at the same time, two things can be right at the same time. And another thing that can be right is the fact that there were attacks on Meghan before she even got married, as well as there was also joy and celebration. People were saying that Meghan's seed was going to taint the royal family straight out of Compton, to the point where Harry had to actually put a statement out to begin with to say, we need to stop these attacks that are racially aggravated.
Oh, what was an attack about a headline referencing straight out of Compton? It was about the area in California when she grew up. How was that racist? You're grasping at straws, Joanna. Find me a better example than that.
Well, even the fact when Archie was born, the person who actually tweeted a picture of a monkey, a chimpanzee, have they done that to any other royal family members, baby? No. Is there any racial connotation to do with monkeys and black people? Yes. So to pretend as if nobody cared about Meghan Markle's race is completely disingenuous, Dan, and you know it. And even if there were celebrations to begin with about Meghan and Harry's union, fine. But there were also people. It's not just about whether Meghan Markle looks visibly black or not. It's about what she represents. It's about the change. It's about the questions of somebody coming that is an ethnic minority.
No, I think you're speaking rubbish. I don't think anyone had a problem with Meghan Markle because of her race. I honestly don't.
It's facts. the racially aggravated comments were fact. And also, let's just say that there's different types of racism. There's obviously overt and covert racism. And some of the double standards in the way that Meghan has been reported for doing exactly the same thing as Kate, those double standards and also the unconscious bias plays into a part of it. And how much can somebody take? And it's very rich for, you know, somebody
The
like
unconscious
Trevor.
bias. So you're going down the Harry path now. So people didn't know they were being racist. Okay. Chris Rose, let me bring you in on this.
It's just different.
OK, we'll get Chris Rose to respond. Chris, great to have you on the show, by the way, becoming a prominent Conservative commentator on social media. So it's brilliant to have you making your debut. Who do you agree with, Chris, Joanna or Samantha?
I agree with Samantha. I mean, I remember the day of the wedding and it was absolutely buzzing. There was loads of royalists out celebrating from all different races. And, you know, even when Meghan was adopting into a new role as a royal, we had sympathy of her because we know that it's not easy to do. But, you know, over time, criticism towards her was easily dismissed as, oh, it must be because she's black or it must be because she's a woman as well. And, you know, people like Piers Morgan and Jeremy Clarkson have made quite fair criticisms of her. And sometimes people instantly just dismiss it, say this because of her race, but it's not. It's because of her persona. And, you know, I used to be a big fan of Meghan, but honestly, over time, I realised that her persona is not likeable.
That's a really interesting point, actually, Chris. And I want to go back to Joanna on that, because don't you risk a situation, Joanna, where you're essentially saying that you can't criticise minority groups at all in this case because you're immediately going to be accused of homophobia or racism? And I also agree with Chris, and you can go back and look at my columns because people like to say that I've been a long-time critic of Meghan. Actually, I was incredibly supportive of her when she entered the royal family, incredibly supportive. It was only once I started to get told about all of her terrible behaviour behind the scenes where I reported the facts about what was going on.
Well, a lot of the things that you reported and a lot of the things that other people reported have actually been, you know, it's been disputed by a lot of people. Things like Tiaragate, who made who cry. You know, there's a lot of things. Just because you reported something down doesn't mean that I have to believe it and anybody else has to believe it. And actually, Chris,
you should be very careful about questioning my sources, Joanna.
Just let me finish, Dan. Chris, you liked Meghan to begin with, but have you considered that maybe some of the publications that you read, some of the things that you read about this woman, you could have well been influenced by this? You don't know.
So, Chris, you can't even make up your own mind, Chris. Let Chris respond to that. Chris, you're too silly to even make up your own mind. You're being brainwashed, Chris.
Yes,
it's possible that, you know, people who from an ethnic minority background can have a terrible personality and others to dislike them. I mean, I didn't want to dislike Meghan. I really liked her at first. I wanted her to go into the royal family and adopt into a new role well, but unfortunately, some of the things she said, like she said, someone made a passing comment about the skins, the baby's skin, and she didn't say which royal family member said it. So she's left that open as interpretation that anybody in the royal family.
The hunt for the royal races, she set that off for 2 years, didn't she? Samantha Smith, final word from you.
Well, all I can say is that those on the left don't seem too happy with Meghan Markle either. It isn't just people on the right, it isn't just our publications, our news outlets that are criticising Meghan Markle. A Black Lives Matter activist, Iman Ayton, herself said that she used the racism card, that she used black people, and that she used the race issue when she needed support, and then she dumped the race issue once she was no longer finding it relevant. It isn't just us. It isn't just the right-wing bigots. It isn't just the racists and the extremists that are finding criticisms with Meghan Markle for her constant victimhood and her constant hierarchy.
About the criticisms, people are fully entitled to criticize Meghan Markle. I'm not saying that. I'm talking about the witch hunt and the lies. When it goes too far and when there's racial connotations to the criticism, that's when I have a problem with it. Criticize Meghan, criticize me, criticize any black person as long as it's fair. And as long as it's balanced, the way that you criticize other people.
Is Meghan Markle herself. No one else cared about race to the extent that you're saying until she herself said that everyone did. Yes, there are always going to be racism, but that's
comments. There have been literal comments with racial undertones.
That's where the line must be drawn. People will always be racist.
Joanna, I told you to give me an example. You've given me the straight out of Compton headline. I'm telling you, that ain't
about
racist.
Her seed tainting the royal family, about her seed tainting the royal family. And as I said, you don't have to be called the N-word specifically to say, okay, this is racism. There are other forms of racism.
Look, you can want to see racism and everything. That's fine. That's fine. That's your choice. Joanna Jaju, Samantha Smith, Chris Rose. Great to have you on the show, Chris. Thank you all so much. We'll see you soon. But who do you agree with on this? Is Sir Trevor Phillips right that no one cared about Meghan's race? From Stockport, when I first saw Meghan's pictures in a paper, I didn't even notice her race. I grew to dislike her due to her obnoxious behaviour. Wimbledon being her first mistake, not her colour. From David, Meghan's race was seen as a positive thing. If anything, the royal family was perceived as being modernised and inclusive. And from Susan, Meghan could have done so much good using her heritage and position within the royal family to enhance race relations. Instead, she sought to create division. I have to say, Susan, I think that's the best comment of the day on this. And your verdict is now in 93% of you do agree with Sir Trevor Phillips that actually you didn't even care about Meghan Markle's race. Just 7% of you say it was an issue. Coming up, as a bombshell new YouGov poll has Meghan Markle's approval rating at an all-time low. Is Her Montecito Majesty all out of star power? Well, my royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Richard Fitzwilliams, they're going to take on this story shortly. But first, as J.K. Rowling and Elon Musk join forces to send a powerful message to the woke-topians of the world, slamming the word cisgender, former Tory Minister Anne Widdecombe joins me to react and dares the trans lobby to call her a cis woman. Back soon. Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
The Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know, Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Lady Colin Campbell with the breaking bombshell on Meghan's record low popularity coming up. But first, it's time for Big Witty Style with former Tory Minister Anne Widdecombe. And responding to a Twitter user who had been barraged by trans activists online for rejecting the word cis, which was created, by the way, by the woke brigade to mean a person with the same gender as the one they're born with, right? So men or women. Elon Musk announced yesterday the words cis or cisgender are considered slurs on this platform. And then J.K. Rowling showed her support, writing cis is ideological language, signifying belief in the unfalsified concept of gender identity. You have a perfect right to believe in unprovable essences that may or may not match the sexed body, but the rest of us have a right to disagree and to refuse to adopt your jargon, to which Musk replied, exactly. So, Anne Widdecombe, firstly, what a power couple, Elon Musk and J.K. Rowling. You don't want to take those two on. But how do you feel, Anne, when you are referred to as a cis woman?
Well, I'm not aware that anybody's actually called me individually a cis woman.
They wouldn't dare.
Aware of it. I would certainly have remembered it, and I would certainly have produced a reaction. I mean, what does the term actually mean? It means you're born, you're a little girl, and then when you get older, you're a woman. And apparently this is so remarkable that it needs a special term, and that term is cisgender. Now, the fact that over 99% of the population follow that norm, seems to me to indicate that you don't need a special term for it. You need a special term for anything that deviates from that norm.
And that would presumably be where you would call someone a trans man or a trans woman.
Yeah, well, hang on there. Yes, I would, but I would call a trans woman or a trans man somebody who had actually been through a proper transition.
Yeah.
And, I mean, going back to the old days, Jan Morris, for example, or these days, what's her name?
Caitlyn Jenner. Caitlyn Jenner.
Willoughby, or, so people like that who've been through the whole process. I'm quite happy to call
not that prisoner Adam Graham, who basically popped on some pink lycra and said, "Call me Isla Graham, so I can go to a women's prison."
A women's prison, yeah.
Isla Bryson.
But somebody who simply says, "I am a man or a woman," who patently obviously is not, and who've still got all the biological equipment of the sex that they were born in, then I do not call that person a trans man or trans woman. Because they're patently, obviously, either male or female. And when it comes to men being able to go to women's prisons on the basis that they identify as a woman. And now school kids are being taught they can identify as a cat. Now, if I had a child who came home and said, "I'm a cat," I would give it a bowl of cat food and a bowl of milk and say, "OK, then this is what cats get."
I know, but the problem is, Anne, I think we've really understood this week, haven't we, that this extreme ideology is seeping through our school system. That's really concerning. But actually, what's even more concerning to me is the fact that the beautiful English language that we have used and developed for hundreds and hundreds of years is now being hijacked by this woke nonsense, because you can't even use the words he or she if you're in the woke world. Now you can't call someone a woman, you have to call them a cis woman. I just think it's so wrong. And I think J.K. Rowling, who is obviously a brilliant writer, is right to say this is ideological. And actually, we need to fight back against it. And that's why more and more, Anne, people are saying, no, I'm not going to start using preferred pronouns. Just because you want me to call you a they, I'm not going to do that because you are a he or you are a she.
The point is, it mangles the language completely. So you get sentences and you read them in the press every day. The press has adopted this stupid formula.
I hate
and
it.
every day you read, about a woman who themselves did such and such a thing. And I'm screaming, you can't mix singular and plural.
No. Believe me, Anne.
Herself, not themselves. Can't be done.
Exactly. And we both know as newspaper columnists, it's impossible not to use correct pronouns. And so I think more and more there has to be a fight back here. And I think it's great. We're with Elon Musk and J.K. Rowling on this. Witty and Widdicombe.
It's a great addition to the battle.
Yeah, indeed. No. Very powerful allies indeed. We'll speak next week, Anne. Thank you so much. But coming up, as interest rates rise to a shocking 5%, is this when the government's house of cards finally comes crashing down for Fishy Rishi? My superstar panel and I debate that shortly. But next, as a bombshell new poll has Meghan Markle's approval rating at an all-time low, with the Duchess red-faced after Spotify pulled the plug on her podcast deal and fashion house deal distancing themselves. What should we expect Montecito Moaners to do now? My Royal Masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Richard Fitzwilliams, they're on deck after this short break.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point, but bomb.
And action.
Sergeant Reed, my superstar panel, they're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News. Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Time now for my Royal Masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell, and tonight, Richard Fitzwilliams. And breaking tonight, a YouGov poll has revealed Meghan Markle's approval rating has fallen to a record low of, wait for it, -47. This tops off a week from hell for the runaway royals as their multi-million-dollar Spotify deal was ripped up with Bill Simmons, an exec at the streaming giant, one of many famous faces stateside, to take them on.
Wish I had been involved in the Meghan and Harry leave Spotify negotiation.
The fucking grifters. That's the podcast we should have launched with them.
I think Harry's a like, my life was so hard. Everybody's life is hard.
Yeah,
you were
true.
the prince of
That's
a
true.
goddamn country who dressed up as a Nazi, and now you're trying to come back as the Pope?
Ladies and gentlemen, I can do 12 episodes in my sleep. 12 episodes, $20 million.
Oh, brutal. And Lady C, the fashion house Dior have also distanced themselves now from Meghan denying rumours of a contract negotiation going on at all. So it does really feel like the Sussex's brand is in free fall. But what do you make of this YouGov poll? Because it shows that they are just getting more and more unpopular, because Harry's in negative territory big time too.
Well, I didn't realise they were quite as popular as they still are. I mean, I would have thought it was 220% minus. So it's very well deserved. They have earned it, and they're going to get it, and they're getting it. I think it shows, you know, as the Jamaicans say, when you spit in the sky, it might fall in your eye, and it's certainly fallen in their eye.
What's so interesting, Lady C, is it feels like this week the floodgates have opened in terms of people in Hollywood, big American names, are finally realising, actually, we can be honest about what we feel about Harry and Meghan.
Yes, absolutely. And you know, Dan, I've been speaking to people in Hollywood, and they confirm what you said the other evening. Netflix is getting ready to give them the old heave-ho. Poor darlings. Doesn't your heart break for them?
Oh, I'm weeping.
Richard, nice to see you.
Richard, are you hearing the same thing, that this Netflix deal could be the next one to go?
Well, this is the thing. Firstly, let me welcome the results of this poll. They've deserved it. They've earned it. As Georgie said, the facts are that they never cared very much about how they were regarded in Britain, and this clearly shows they're not. I'd like to see a further poll regarding the ratings in America. 2 Newsweek polls had them at abominable levels earlier in the year, and then the most recent YouGov poll I saw had a more balanced picture. So far as Netflix are concerned, I think a lot rests on this, because they've lost Spotify, they can't trademark archetypes, and if they were to lose Netflix, and that's $100 million, then that really would be absolutely seismic. But I think they're going to make a fight back, you see. And the other problem is, if they have it rough and hard, a lot of people would take a great deal of delight in seeing them torn down, because look at the way they've built each other up, or built themselves up. It's been ruthless. But here's the problem. Will that make life easier for the royal family, or will they, for example, look at the Random House contract, which they've still got? Meghan could write a memoir. Harry could take the 400 pages he didn't use in Spotify, or he could write a book about his early childhood. So there are all sorts of things, as one welcomes certain results which are richly deserved, that could go very wrong for others. And of course, we wonder how Harry's court cases are going to go.
The problem is, Lady C, they're stuck between a bit of a rock and a hard place, though, aren't they? Because their popularity is dropping because of their continued attacks on the royal family. Even the Americans don't like that anymore. However, if they want to make this, which is all they care about, they're going to have to keep unleashing those attacks. In Meghan's book, for example.
Well, I think the only thing people are interested in is what they have to say about the royal family, whether it's negative or positive. I don't think anybody's interested in anything else they have to say. Neither of them has very much of a brain, and neither of them really has anything to contribute to the edification of people. And, you know, they're both boring. I mean, everybody has an appetite for scandal and gossip, and they might not like it, but they still want to hear it. I mean, do we want to hear Meghan pontificating about how wonderful she is, one act of cruelty at a time? I don't think so.
No, thank you. And wasn't Trevor Phillips just completely right, by the way, Lady C, to say, actually, we never had a problem with her because of her race. You know, she was embraced in Britain. It was nothing to do with the colour of her skin.
Well, isn't it wonderful? I have to say, Trevor Phillips is a capital guy. He's so good and he's so measured. He's a great friend of a great friend of mine. And, you know, it's nice to hear somebody who was the head of the Equalities Commission calling her out as being the fraud that she is. I mean, when you stop to think of the mischief that she has created, not only in terms of ruining the deaths of the Duke of Edinburgh and the Queen, but ruining all sorts of things in the Commonwealth. I mean, being Jamaican, I know that her conduct was directly responsible for the failure of the Wales' tour of Jamaica.
Yes, it was, but she loved that. She loved that. She thought that was a result, you know, and you're right, it did, it destroyed it. But look, back in Britain, the Wales' eldest son, Prince George, heir to the throne, has been spotted today on a visit to a rather well-known school. Seen in line to the throne, George, who turns 10 next month, visited Eton, indicating that he's likely to follow in his father's footsteps in attending the illustrious public school. Richard, do you think it's inevitable that the royal family will follow this familiar tradition, or should Wills and Kate perhaps be looking to freshen things up?
Well, I think the problem here has always been to board or not to board. And I think William and Catherine will be very, very sensitive on this, depending on the various characteristics of, obviously, George as future king, but also, obviously, Charlotte and Louis. How would they each individually respond to a boarding school? Would this be an environment that they'd like? And I think that is the driving force here. The fact that, of course, we know William and also Harry, we know well, went to Eton. I mean,
oh yeah, we've heard all about that, haven't we? Lady C, do you think George will end up at Eton?
I think there's a very good chance. I mean, there are many really good reasons for being at Eton. It's very near to Windsor, you know, so that's a great convenience for anybody who has a connection to the royal family. And it's a very good school, and he is academically gifted enough that he will do well at Eton. And, you know, as a future king, Eton is one of the best schools in the world.
Yeah,
I don't
and
think
as you
he
say,
can get a better education.
Yeah, and as you say, it's so close to Windsor that he could be popping back and forth very easily. So, Lady Colin Campbell, Richard Fitzwilliams, great to have you with us, Richard. Thank you both so much. Have a great weekend. But coming up, as rescuers confirm the missing Titanic sub in the North Atlantic suffered a catastrophic implosion, I'm joined by two men who knew the crew closely. Titanic expert Craig Soap and a close friend of the pilot, Paul-Henri Nogelet, and Guillermo Sonley, the founder and CEO of Ocean Gate, are going to join me live to react to tonight's tragic news. The next in the media buzz, as interest rates rise to a shocking 5%, is this when the government's house of cards finally comes crashing down? Plus, as Schofield's young lover gets set to have his say, will ITV bosses be nervous about what he could reveal? Both those debates are coming up in just a moment. We're also going to have a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages for you, hot off the press. Don't go anywhere. We're back in just 2 minutes' time.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing. We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute.
kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, 111 years after sinking in the Atlantic, the Titanic claims her latest victims. Debris from the missing Titan submarine is discovered by rescue teams, with the vessel suffering a catastrophic implosion that killed the 5 souls on board. Tonight, I'm joined live by the man who co-founded the firm that made that doomed sub, Guillermo Sonley, and world-renowned Titanic expert Craig Sopen, a personal friend of Titan pilot Paul-Henri Nargeolet. Both will give their emotional first reactions live on this show very shortly. Also tonight, the Bank of England sparks an economic tidal wave with a shock interest rate rise to 5%. So is this Rishi Sunak's menace horribilis the month his government's House of Cards finally comes crashing down? On my superstar panel give their verdict next. And tonight I'm joined by Carol McGiffin, making his debut, the former Conservative Cabinet Minister Ranil Jayawardena, and Amy Nicol. Plus a bombshell twist in the Philip Schofield scandal. The young ITV runner embroiled in the affair is now poised to spill the beans, including rubbishing ITV claims, we're told, that he was routinely quizzed about the romance. Don't miss that in the Media Buzz. In Uncancelled, why did Elton John's husband David Furnish admit Schofield made a colossal error of judgment before later telling Sky News that he was a victim of homophobia? Fleet Street legend Calvin McKenzie targets Scove's hypocrite defenders, plus explosive new accusations against the BBC that it misled the public over Martin Bashir's Princess Diana shenanigans. Meanwhile, the UK's top former Equalities Commissioner blasts the Duke and Duchess of Winch for unforgivably, his words, squandering a golden chance to show the best of Britain. So is Sir Trevor Phillips right that Harry and Meghan could have shaped the world for millions by proving our anti-racist credentials? Find out as well which pop megastar earned her halo by donating a £1 million cheque to a needy restaurant. That's when I crown my GBUJ. Did you pick up on the hint there? We'll have tomorrow's newspaper front pages for you, hot off the press in mere moments, but with the latest on the Titanic drama, Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you. Well, the top story tonight is the sad news that the expedition company of the Titan submersible say they believe the pilot and 4 passengers on board the Titan submersible that was on its way to see the Titanic wreckage below the North Atlantic Ocean are all dead. OceanGate pilot and CEO Stockton Rush, UK citizens Hamish Harding, Shahzada Dawood, and his son Suleiman Dawood, and the French national Paul-Henri Nargeolet lost contact with their support ship on Sunday, an hour and 45 minutes into their descent to the wreckage of the Titanic. The US Coast Guard confirming this evening their bodies may never be recovered. Remotely operated vehicles had found a debris area and had found sections of the submersible and will remain on scene to develop a theory, a timeline of what actually happened. Rear Admiral John Morga said the 5 pieces of debris found in the search for the missing sub earlier today were consistent with a catastrophic loss of pressure.
An ROV, or remote operated vehicle, from the vessel Horizon Arctic discovered the tail cone of the Titan submersible approximately 1,600 feet from the bow of the Titanic on the seafloor. The ROV subsequently found additional debris, in consultation with experts from within the Unified Command, the debris is consistent with the catastrophic loss of the pressure chamber.
Well, here in the UK, the Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly, has paid tribute, tweeting tragic news that those on the Titan submersible, including 3 British citizens, have been lost following an international search operation. The UK government is closely supporting the families affected and expresses our deepest condolences. Well, today's other top story, the Bank of England raised the interest rate by 0.5 percentage point, up to 5% now, the highest rate in 15 years, as the bank tried to tackle inflation. The bank's governor, Andrew Bailey, said online inflation is still too high and must be dealt with. But he added, if we don't raise rates now, it will be worse later. It's the 13th time in a row the bank has increased the interest rate. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, said it's 13 years of Conservative government failure. Speaking to a warehouse in Kent this afternoon, the Prime Minister, though, said there is no easy fix, but halving inflation is still his top priority.
Rooting out inflation is not easy. It requires difficult decisions. It doesn't happen overnight. But if we don't get on top of it, it would just get worse and it would last longer. And that's not going to do anyone any favours. It's not going to be good for you and your families in the long run. And even though it means I have to make some difficult decisions, that's the type of Prime Minister I am, because I want to do the right thing for you and your families in the long term.
Now, at Royal Ascot today, one particular horse has caused quite an upset, winning the Norfolk Stakes at an odds of 150 to 1. Valiant Force, ridden by jockey Ross O'Ryan, becomes the longest priced winner at Ascot in its racing history. Meanwhile, one of the King and Queen's horses, Desert Hero, won the King George V Stakes in a photo finish. Charles and Camilla looking ecstatic as they were photographed watching their 18 to 1 thoroughbred claim victory. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and the TuneIn app. You're with GB News, Britain's news channel.
Tomorrow's news tonight now in our media buzz, and the first front pages are in. One story dominating, as you'd expect. The Metro leads with the tragic news that 5 Titanic explorers have died. Their headline, Titan 5 died in implosion. The Independent headline says sub-search ends in tragedy as debris reveals implosion. 5 on board the tourist submersible died as wreckage found near the Titanic's bow indicates catastrophic loss of pressure. We're actually going to be speaking to the founder of OceanGate very shortly. But first, my superstar panel back with me. The broadcaster and columnist Carol McGiffin, the former Conservative Cabinet Minister Ranil Jayawardena, and the author and broadcaster Amy Nicol. Now, Britain's financial storm threatened to turn into a tsunami today, with the Bank of England's shock interest rate rise to 5%. And it's just going to go up over the next few months. The move inflicted more pain on cash-strapped Brits, not least those on variable mortgages whose payments have rocketed by up to £1,400 a month. A looming recession heaps yet more pressure on Rishi Sunak, who was laughably billed as a safer pair of hands when he ousted the best Prime Minister we never really had, the bold Liz Truss, last year. These were the PM's mealy-mouthed comments on the unfolding crisis earlier today.
Now, I'm here to tell you that I am totally 100% on it, and it is going to be okay, and we are going to get through this. And that is the most important thing I wanted to let you know today. Now, you should know, I know this won't make it any easier, but what we're grappling with here is something that many countries around the world are also grappling with at the same time as we are right now. So if you look at interest rates in Australia, in Canada, in New Zealand, across the world, they're all at high levels. Actually, interest rates in Europe are the highest they've been in for 20 years because they're all grappling with inflation in the same way that we are. Many of you may have friends or family in those places, and if you spoke to them, they'd tell you the same thing. Now, that doesn't make it any easier. Of course I know that, but it's important for you to know that we're not alone in dealing with this.
Sunday Telegraph editor Alistair Heath today, though, called the mess Rishi's mensis horribilis, the month when the Tory House of Cards finally came crashing down. He reckons regardless of the PM's performance from now until the general election, it would be, quote, impossible to shake off the general stench of failures that emanates from the government. So, Ranul Jayawardene, you were in Liz Truss's cabinet. She tried to avoid this. Everything she did economically that she was forced out of office for was to avoid this total catastrophe, right? Did we get it wrong? Did your party get it wrong getting rid of Truss?
Well, as you say, we did try. We were going for, and I hate this term, the supply-side reforms. That's just, deregulating the economy, cutting taxes. We tried. But, the economic establishment was dead set against us. And we're now seeing the consequences of not taking those bold, brave decisions. And this is the point, that actually a lot of this is outside of politics. A lot of this is the Bank of England. Bank of England's mandate hasn't changed since Gordon Brown created it in '97, and they were too slow to act.
And the governor has been a disaster. Well, should he go?
Well, I'm not a fan of what he has done, and certainly I think he and the Monetary Policy Committee should have acted much more quickly than they have done. If you look at the US, the Fed there, they acted more quickly, and we could have avoided the pain that people are facing.
I mean, McGiff, the issue is the economic establishment didn't want Truss to try and do anything dramatic. It's almost as if they want us to fail.
You just took the words right out of my mouth.
Why, Carol? Why, though? What's behind it?
Well,
Is it to prove that Brexit...
No. Mark Carney can say everything about Brexit. He blames everything on Brexit. He's still going on about it, and he's not even the governor anymore. And I do think that the way that this has been done, in a way, it has to be deliberate. Why? I'll come to it in a minute, but it has been done deliberately because they could have raised interest rates sooner, but more slowly. And now it's just going up like that. It's gone up a whole 0.5% today, and that's huge. That is quite a lot. but the thing is, you have to remember that the interest rates are still only 5%. There was a time when I remember paying 15% back in the 90s, late 80s, 90s. And I know, I don't want them to go back there, but 5% is still quite low. And people have been lulled into a false sense of security that interest rates were always going to be below 1% or, so small.
Well,
people kept
remortgaging. This all comes back to what happened over COVID, didn't it? Printing money, slash the interest rates. And Amy, I mean, this is going to be great news in terms of getting in a Labour government. They're not going to be able to sort out this mess, though, are they?
I think they will, because their ideology actually promotes growth, unlike... so I'd like to...
They've just been proven by all of the independent bodies to be overspending. They haven't to slash all of their policy pledges.
That's investment. If you invest, you create profit and you grow the economy.
It's spending. It's taxpayers' money, it's higher taxes.
Is investment.
It's not.
It is. Gordon Brown grew the economy in 2 years more than
you're
with respect.
You're really not going to defend Gordon Brown's economic performance, are you? Do you remember the note that his government left to the Tories?
Everybody knows the note was a joke. So
it happens to be true.
But I want to pull you up on something, because you said we tried and we made a mistake. That is true. Your government have made a mistake.
I'm not trying to say that.
You tried something and it didn't work.
I said we tried.
When the government tries something and it doesn't work, why do we have to pay? We have to pay for your failures. And
that is simply not true. We tried by getting the supply-side reforms out there, like building houses. We need to build 1 million new homes in London. That's what people want. We need to reform the system. That's what we tried to do. But sadly, some people didn't want that to happen.
How are we going to afford those houses?
Can I just say that I do think that there is something in the government trying to make everybody poor. I think they really want people to be poor, and I think they really want them to be struggling.
Well, it worked over COVID, didn't it?
Exactly. They shut everything down on purpose when they knew they didn't have to, and then they started printing money at the worst possible time, as Mervyn King said this week, the previous governor of the Bank of England, and they just gave money away to people, and people were just like, that's great, I don't have to work.
You're right, we printed money. Gordon Brown printed a load of money, and yes, during COVID we printed a lot of money.
When the economy had completely
as Megan said, we didn't need to do it. We didn't need to do it. Final word, Amy.
Carol makes the point, this government want to make people poorer. Well, they do, certain people, working people, but they want to make the rich richer. And the measures, austerity, made working people poorer. Brexit made people poorer. And now this management from Rishi Sunak is making us
As Liz Truss told you in Lee last week, Amy, why does socialism never work? Now, look, nearly everyone's had their say on the Philip Schofield scandal, but perhaps the most important person of all yet to give their side. Now, though, the young man himself, who had a fling with the ex-presenter, is reported to be ready and poised to spill the beans. Known now as Person X, Schofield's former This Morning runner is set to be quizzed by the barrister conducting ITV's external investigation into the affair. ITV Chief Executive Carolyn McCall told MPs last week that Schofi's lover was confronted 12 times about the relationship, but sources close to the lad have dramatically revealed he was never asked. They said it will be his chance to have his say. It could most definitely lead to some difficult reading for ITV bosses if it turns out that he says he wasn't asked about the relationship 12 times. So, Carol McGiffin, you obviously worked with this young runner on Loose Women when you were a panellist there. We can't name him, let's just be clear about that. But it's interesting, isn't it, that increasingly there is briefing coming out from people close to him saying that ITV and Schofield's version of events do not match his.
Well, we'll find out, I hope, but I'm not holding my breath because I don't think ITV will be even slightly worried about what he might say. I'm sure they already know what he could say. But I don't think that will come out in this investigation. And this is this still the parliamentary investigation?
No, so this is
their
now
own?
the independent case.
Yeah, the one that they supposedly did before, but they got nothing from it. And with the lawyers involved as well, with Philip engaging the lawyers for the runner, for the young man, it's like, what are they still trying to hide? What is being covered up here?
Although it's interesting, though, there has been a change on that front. They revealed at the Select Committee, or John Nicholson revealed at the Select Committee...
They're working pro bono now.
They're actually working pro bono.
Yeah.
This idea that Schofield's paying for it now. Now, that's
But
bad
he
news
engaged
for
them,
ITV.
though. He engaged them.
He did, but this is a very credible company, and they're working pro bono. I think that suggests there's more to reveal here. I mean, Rana, what do you think about the story? Because, you know, it is quite a serious cover-up, is it not, by ITV, potentially?
Yeah, I mean, look, first of all, I don't ever want to opine on people's personal lives, and I think he said that it's unwise but not illegal. So I think that's sort of a starting point. But I mean, here we have further proof, just like the BBC and Jimmy Savile. You know, these are the sorts of things that happen in the mainstream media. They pretend that they are angels to everyone else, and actually they cover up for themselves.
Yes. And that's why this story is important. I think you're right. It's actually nothing. People don't get this. They think that it's about Philip Schofield's private life. It isn't.
Not at all.
It's about a cover-up. Amy Nicole, where do you stand on this one?
Well, I watched the parliamentary committee with eagle eyes. So I'll just be interested to see whether what this barrister finds out is the same as what Carolyn McCall said in that parliamentary committee. And I think if there is any discrepancies, that's when, if ITV have nothing to hide and everything is true, and they said everything that they said was true, then they've got nothing to worry about.
Yeah,
but if it isn't, they've got something to worry about.
No, very true. And ITV did say that Jane Mulcahy Casey of Blackstone Chambers has been asked to carry out this external review to establish the facts of the Schofield case. The Chief Executive Carolyn McCall says she will review our records and talk to people involved. This work will also consider our relevant processes and policies and whether we need to change or strengthen any. She says, though, no evidence was brought to her or her team during the Schofield affair. Amy Nicole, Ranil Jayawardena, Carol McGiffin, do stand by, because coming up, as the UK's top former Equalities Commissioner Sir Trevor Phillips blasts the Sussexes for unforgivably squandering a golden chance to show the best of Britain, is he right that no one cared about Meghan's race? My Superstar panel return to debate that shortly. But next, as the 5 Titanic explorers are confirmed dead after their sub suffered a catastrophic implosion, I'm joined by 2 men who knew the crew closely. Titanic expert Craig Soap, and a close friend of the pilot Paul-Henri Nargeolet, and Guillermo San-Lee, who is the founder and chief executive of OceanGate. They're going to give their first response straight after this. Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, and breaking tonight. Rescuers looking for the missing Titan submarine in the North Atlantic have confirmed the vessel suffered a catastrophic implosion, killing all 5 souls on board. It brings a tragic end to the story that's gripped the world.
An ROV, or remote operated vehicle, from the vessel Horizon Arctic discovered the tail cone of the Titan submersible approximately 1,600 feet from the bow of the Titanic on the seafloor. The ROV subsequently found additional debris. In consultation with experts from within the Unified Command, the debris is consistent with the catastrophic loss of the pressure chamber.
Just terrible news. I'm joined live now by Guillermo Son Lee. He is the former chief executive and the co-founder of OceanGate, the firm that made the doomed sub, who until earlier tonight said he remained hopeful his friends and colleagues, including the OceanGate chief executive Stockton Rush, would be successfully rescued. So, Guillermo, This must be an absolutely devastating night for you. Firstly, please take my condolences and the condolences of the audience. What's your reaction to the loss of the submarine and especially your friend, the Chief Executive, Stockton Rush?
Yeah, as you can imagine, it's a tragic loss for the families of the crew, for the crew, the team members who have spent the last 4 days feverishly trying to find and rescue their teammates. I've been dealing with this for the last 3+ days, and it's been a roller coaster ride of emotions for me. I can't even imagine what it's like for them.
Based on what you've heard from the Coast Guard, what do you think happened to Titan?
Well, I think it's premature for anybody to speculate on what happened. It's going to take days, weeks, months to collect data and analyze the data and try to figure out what happened. Right now is more a time to mourn the loss of the crew members and to preserve their legacies, and there will certainly be a time for making these kinds of assessments in the future.
Can you talk to me a little bit about Stockton Rush? What was he like as a man, as a human being?
So I first met Stockton in 2008, and then we co-founded OceanGate in 2009. I was immediately drawn to him because he's one of the most intelligent people I've ever met. Talented aerospace engineer, a passionate explorer. He was very committed to pushing the bounds of humanity's knowledge of the world's oceans in large part so that we could preserve the ocean. And he was an incredible human being. He was also, despite what others have said, very risk averse. He was very keenly aware of the dangers of operating in the deep ocean. He was very committed to safety and believed that every one of the innovations in anything he designed was designed to expand the capabilities of humanity learning about the oceans, but also the capability of doing it as safely as possible.
I'm glad you've said that, because he has come in for some quite extraordinary abuse over the past few days, which I think is totally inappropriate given that we didn't know if he were lost or not, given what his family was going through. But it sounds like you feel pretty convinced that he wouldn't have cut corners here.
No, and I think a lot of the folks that are commenting on this do have the expertise to form opinions like this, but like me, they don't have all of the data. And I think it's really a matter of waiting until we have the data and have a chance to analyze it to figure out what happened, take some lessons learned, and move forward from there.
Well, look, I repeat, absolutely devastating news. Guillermo Sonlin, the former CEO and co-founder of OceanGate, thank you so much for joining us at this really difficult time. Now, Titan's pilot was the Frenchman Paul-Henri Nargeolet, and my next guest, the world-renowned Titanic historian Craig Sopen, was a close friend and colleague of the skilled seaman who perished with his crew. Craig, I think we're going to get you back very shortly. Craig Sopen, I think we have you now. Craig,
I am here.
Huge condolences. What a terrible day. Tell me about your friend, Paul-Henri, guy in his late 70s, still taking incredible risks.
Yeah, it's actually been a very difficult 4 days for me. As soon as I heard the news on Monday morning, I sent PH an email, hoping against hope that he would write back and tell me that he just didn't make the voyage for some reason. And knowing that PH always responds to me immediately, and having not received a response, I knew that he had to be on that ship. And, you know, I can't see him taking too much risk. He acknowledged that there was risk in anything we do, but he's a pretty smart guy. And I can't see him doing a project like this unless he felt that it was safe to do. He was very passionate about Titanic, which is why I think in this particular case, he was more or less what I can consider to be a tour guide rather than the pilot. However, he has piloted many voyages to the Titanic. In fact, more than just about anybody else. I think he was down there about 37 times. So no one knew more about the layout of this wreck than him. Whenever I had a question about what something looked like or where something could be found, he is the one that I asked. If I were going to go on a voyage, he would be the one I'd want to go with. I've known him for about 25 years, and I can say, and echoing a lot of other people's opinions, that is really just too early to tell what happened and what made this ship come apart. I'm an attorney full-time, so I really rely on evidence, not assumption, not supposition.
Exactly.
Before I make conclusions.
And that's why I think a lot of the criticism has been incredibly unfair, because we do not know what happened. But look, Craig, I want to talk to you about the Titanic. You know, you're one of the world-renowned Titanic historians. So many of us, millions around the world, me included, remain absolutely fascinated by that fateful voyage. But what do you make of the fact that it has now caused this new tragedy, this new loss of lives 111 years on? It's going to really add to the mystique and the horror that still surrounds the Titanic, isn't it?
I think that we have just added 5 more people to the victims of Titanic. When people would wake up every morning for the last 4 days and want to know what happened to that submersible, they run to turn on the news on television. I don't think they were merely looking at a submersible that was missing, but they were looking at a submersible that was connected to Titanic, because Titanic has such an allure, not just from the films and the books, but also from the stories, the 2,200 stories that came off the Titanic, and the ship goes out in so many directions, that is what I think they were really looking at in this case. The loss of human life here was the real tragedy, and now we've had 2 Titanic tragedies in the last 111 years.
I know. It's unbelievable. It really is a story that has captivated the world. We were hoping for a happy ending this time, and what a tragedy that we didn't get one. The Titanic historian Craig Sopen, close friend of the Frenchman Paul-Henri Nargeolet, confirmed lost with the Titan tonight. Thank you so much, Craig. Now, coming up in Uncancelled, as Elton John's husband David Furnish admits Schofield made a colossal error of judgment before later telling Sky News that he was a victim of homophobia. I'm joined by Fleet Street legend Calvin McKenzie as he targets Scove's hypocrite defenders. You don't want to miss that. But next in the Media Buzz, as the UK's top former Equalities Commissioner Sir Trevor Phillips blasts the Duke and Duchess of Winch for unforgivably squandering a golden chance to show the best of Britain, is he right that Harry and Meghan could have shaped the world for millions by proving our anti-racist credentials? My superstar panel return to debate that in moments.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc. That's the whole point. But
And action.
Sergeant, the big read, my superstar panel that are already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News. Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now let's return to tomorrow's news tonight now in our media buzz, and more front pages are in. What a story. The Daily Mail headline reads, "The Titanic claims 5 more lives." Wreckage of the tourist sub is found just 1,600 feet from the sunken liner, as the US Coast Guard says it was destroyed by a catastrophic implosion. The Sun headline reads, "They had no chance." The newspaper reports Titan imploded 1 hour and 45 minutes into its journey down to the Titanic. My superstar panel return now. The columnist and broadcaster Carol McGiffin, former Conservative Cabinet Minister Ranil Jayawardena, and the author and broadcaster Amy Nicol. Marking 75 years since the first of the Windrush generation landed on British shores, Trevor Phillips has celebrated us as the most welcoming country in Europe, despite what the Sussexes may say. In a furious attack on Harry and Meghan, the UK's top former Equalities Commissioner told the Daily Mail today they constructed this completely ridiculous and unpleasant story about how maltreated they were, which frankly no one believes. No one cared about Meghan's race. They could have made things different for millions of people, and they chose not to. That's unforgivable in my book. That's a sin. But as we all remember, the calamitous couple's claims of experiencing racism were then soon downgraded to unconscious bias. This is how they desperately backtracked from their baseless accusations.
And also concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born.
In the Oprah interview, you accuse members of your family of racism. You don't even...
No, we didn't.
Well,
the British press said that.
Right.
Did Meghan ever mention that they were racist?
She said there were troubling comments about
There
Archie's
was
skin
concern
colour.
about his skin colour.
Right. Wouldn't you describe that as essentially racist?
I wouldn't, not having lived within that family.
And of course, this YouGov poll released today shows Harry and Meghan's popularity crashing through the floor. So it looks like Sir Trevor Phillips actually speaks for the nation here, Ranil.
Absolutely. I mean, it's such a great shame what's happened. Britain's not perfect, but it's a million times better than most countries around the world. And I don't think people cared one bit about Meghan's heritage.
No.
They, in fact, wanted both Harry and Meghan to succeed. And you could see that when the Fab Four was created in the first place. There was a great opportunity for the royal family to move into the 21st century with all sorts of new opportunities. And it's been brought down, I'm sad to say, by I think some sort of petty vendettas and as you say, some, as we just saw, you know, some really unfortunate interviews that have been given to try and justify their own media appearance.
Delusion.
Well, it is delusion. It's delusion because it feels like all they've got is to sort of spray around these generalised accusations of racism. You know, in their Netflix series, they tried to pinpoint it on Nigel Farage and Brexit, for example, because I guess they felt that was safer than what they did on the Oprah interview, which was to pin it to the royal family.
I think everybody's just so sick of their perpetual victimhood. It's like, you know, they have everything. They have everything they want. They are not... They're so wrong about this country and the way they portray the royal family as racist.
Did you care about Meghan's mixed race here?
No, I didn't even... I mean, it didn't even register at the time. I watched Suits for years and I never even thought, oh, she's a mixed race girl. I never even thought that, you know. I honestly didn't. And I know that no one else cared. And you're right about the wedding as well. People really embraced that wedding. Everybody was up for it, into it. And then they just put their fingers on the self-destruct buttons and moved to America and started slagging everybody off.
Wanted to bring us down with them.
It's dreadful.
Amy, no one gave a damn about Meghan's race. And actually, if they did care, it was only to embrace it and to say how excited we were to have an American princess.
I think that's not exactly true, though, is it? Because
well, it is, because I've just said it and I mean it.
Recollections may vary.
Okay. Well, is it embracing her by saying opinion pieces, quoting exotic DNA, saying Harry's girl is straight out of Compton? Well, there was a very big difference between the way she was reported
firstly, the straight out of Compton headline is not at all racist in any way. It's a clever newspaper pun about a neighbourhood where she lived close by in California. So that is not evidence of racism. And if you read the whole column about the exotic DNA, which was written by Rachel Johnson, a very liberal woman, it was actually entirely in support of Meghan.
I'm not sure, because it's pointing to her race all the time. There was a lot of unconscious elements.
What does this mean?
No, it means...
What does this mean, Carol?
I'll tell you what happened. When Harry got with Meghan, it was there were a hell of a lot of black commentators saying, this is great, we've got a person of colour in the royal family. And everyone else is sitting around and going, oh, really? OK, that's great. Is it great? Yeah, it's great.
And not being funny, but you know, like, so I'm married to a white woman, and you know, we look at our children and we thought about our children, and you go, what are they going to look like? It's a perfectly normal observation.
So you say that's not necessarily racist. What if a relative though had said to you, oh, how dark do you think your baby's going to be? Because Harry and Meghan suggested that was racist.
Well, I think it's a perfectly valid question alongside what eye colour they're going to have, what hair colour they're going to have.
I think you said something quite interesting, because right at the start of when you started speaking, you said, we do have progress to be made. And that's what I think. I think sometimes when you say, oh, well, Britain's not a racist country, it's as if we're perfect. And we're far from perfect.
Look at the Sewell report. Yeah, but your party, commissioned the Sewell report by Tony Sewell.
Criticised. It's not a credible report.
No, that's a disgusting thing to say. How dare you?
Can I say one thing to clarify
Tony Sewell? Why? Because he didn't say that the country was a racist household. They spent months on that, and there were incredible people on that commission. So I think that's disgusting.
It is the anniversary of Windrush today.
Yes.
Yes. The Windrush generation, when they arrived in the UK, were treated appallingly.
So think about the progress we've made.
Theresa May's government tried to deport a vast swathe of the Windrush generation.
From the days of no blacks, no Irish, to now having an Asian Prime Minister, a Hindu Prime Minister, and a Muslim First Minister of Scotland.
OK, final word, Amy.
All I want to do is finish that point. Windrush generation...
Quickly.
We treated them appallingly, we tried to deport them, and now guess what? We still haven't sorted out their compensation payments. So if we aren't a racist country, prove it by giving them what they deserve. OK, now the British Bashing Corporation is embroiled in yet another impartiality storm. This time the culprit being BBC News presenter and poster boy Clive Myrie, who appeared on the woke panel show Have I Got News For You with a whole load of Tory-bashing jokes up his sleeve. I couldn't believe this. Have a look.
After being found by the House of Commons committee to have lied repeatedly, Boris Johnson takes the opportunity to deny that he's ever been jogging or that he has a dog.
The sad thing about this is it's kind of crashed into the back of the other story, which we didn't even get to deal with, his mad resignation honours list. So I don't think we had the full time to be outraged about.
Helen, don't worry.
Oh, good.
Plenty of time. Anyone know why Boris Johnson might have given her one? Given her a peerage. That is what I...
You'll remember you were there for the end of Clive Myrie's career. Yeah. Or the beginning of a new ride.
The blundering Beeb then dramatically pulled Myrie from the 10 o'clock news show airing on the same night after content chief Charlotte Moore got spooked. They would be called out for their anti-Tory bias. But surely the so-called impartial presenter shouldn't have been on the programme making all of these jokes about how terrible Boris and the Tories are in the first place. But now, breaking tonight. The family of the British billionaire adventurer and Titan sub-victim Hamish Hardeen have just paid tribute to the dedicated father who they say lived his life for his family, his business and for the next adventure. Amy Nicole, Ranil Jayawardena, Carol McGiffin, do stand by. Because coming up, find out which pop megastar earned her halo, clue, by donating £1 million to a flurry of needy restaurants when I crown my GB and UJ later in the show. But next, and uncancelled, why did Elton John's husband David Furnish say Philip Schofield made a colossal error of judgment before later telling Sky News that he was a victim of homophobia? Fleet Street legend Calvin McKenzie gets stuck into that, plus bombshell claims that the BBC deliberately misled the public over Martin Bashir's Princess Diana shenanigans. We're back in just 2 minutes' time.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing. We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
It's time now for Uncancelled. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. And David Furnish, the husband of pop legend Elton John, has popped up on Sky News with some rather confusing commentary on the recent Philip Schofield saga. First insisting the former This Morning presenter was right to resign before echoing Elton's recent comments by branding the media coverage of the scandal as homophobic. Watch.
Philip Schofield, and Elton agrees, behaved inappropriately. And it could be perceived as an abuse of power, and it was also, he lied about it. So he behaved inappropriately. I think what was horrifying to watch was what I would call a disproportionate response within certain levels of the media, where it was written about over and over and over, where they were piling on for days and then weeks, continually writing negative, highly critical pieces. It felt disproportionate to the situation at hand. He did an interview, he acknowledged he'd made mistakes, he wants to go forward with his life.
Delighted to welcome to the show Fleet Street legend, former editor of The Sun, Calvin McKenzie. Calvin, why Are they bringing homophobia into this when Schofield himself concealed his sexuality while married to a woman for decades and only actually revealed the sexuality as a way to stop the story about the young runner coming out? I just don't see how this is homophobic. Kelvin, do you?
Well, actually, it's worse than that, because in the original Elton John interview last week, he said that had this been a woman he'd had the relationship with, it would all been over with in a matter of days. Actually, it would have been a lot worse. This would have been a girl of 15 who was hired thanks to the quotes relationship when she was 18, and the relationship started when she was 20. There would have been a good possibility of plot going around if it had been a girl. So it is completely wrong. And the other issue that I didn't like about what Elton John said was that he's claimed that the homophobia was on the march in the United States. Now. He probably got his ear closer to the ground on this kind of stuff than I have. But actually, I haven't seen anything. As far as I can see, there is no such thing, as far as I can detect anyway, in the UK or in the Western world called homophobia. What there is a fantastic embracing of anybody's sexuality. And so I wonder whether it's because Elton John fears that without having the microphone anymore, because it's his last tour, whether he feels he's got to carry on saying this kind of stuff in order to make himself and his partner furnish relevant. I think it's completely wrong, and they should actually, on this subject, they should keep out of it.
OK, now look, the BBC, Kelvin, has been accused of a sensational cover-up over the infamous Martin Bashir interview with Princess Diana. So in autumn 2020, the broadcaster claimed Bashir's ill health, right, remember this, made it impossible for them to answer any questions about the Panorama scandal. However, the Daily Telegraph have done a great job obtaining emails that show BBC executives were actually in contact with the disgraced reporter at the time. This is what the BBC has said tonight, Kelvin. The BBC rejects any suggestion it has acted illegally. The fact there was contact between the Beeb and Martin Bashir does not mean that he was at the time fit to participate in any detailed discussion of the events of 1995. He wasn't. But I have to say, having looked at all of the email discussions myself, it feels like the BBC were directly misleading the media over this again, which is just astonishing.
Yeah, well, yeah, but this has been going on, you know. I mean, this is hard to believe. This has been going on for 30 years, right? It's massively in the BBC's interest to cover up everything. And if they can claim that Bashir had ill health, although, of course, there was a great photo, wasn't there, when he was ill, going into a curry house and coming out with a bottle of wine and whatever kind of curry he enjoyed. So, look, I don't know how ill Mr. Bashir is. He seems to have been smart enough to have pulled off one of the great con jobs of all time, tricking a princess into attacking her husband on television, and at the same time never faced any issue whatsoever. As far as I know, he's never written a check. Nothing's ever happened. And the other issue I've got is, why doesn't Harry get irritated by this? This was his mother, after all. And do you know why? Because there's no money in it, right? At least if he can attack the tabloid press, go through the High Court, at the end of the day, there may be a check. But actually, when there's something like this, which is actually quite clearly 101% wrong, right? He's as quiet as a church mouse. It's very puzzling.
Indeed, he's left attacking the BBC all to Prince William, actually. Calvin Mackenzie, brilliant stuff. We will speak on Monday. Thank you very much. But it's time now to reveal tonight's greatest Britain and Union jackass. My superstar panel returned. Carol McGiffin, who's your nominee for tonight's greatest Britain?
It's Elon Musk for teaming up with J.K. Rowling and saying that the cis man, cis woman phrase is a slur, and anyone who uses it on Twitter is going to chuck off. And I hope he does.
Yeah, do not call me a cis man. I cannot bear it.
No.
Rano, who's your nominee?
Well, my nominee is the 13-year-old girl and her friend at Rye College who spoke up for common sense this week, taking on the hard left, radical establishment that seems to be encroaching on every aspect of our education.
Amy Nicole, your nominee?
Well, it's an honorary Greatest Britain. This week, I've gone for Beyonce, who gave $1 million to restaurants in need, including a Nigerian restaurant in North London, who got £8,000 off of Queen Bee.
That's quite cool. But I'm actually going to go with Ranal Jayawardena and the Rai schoolgirls who were so incredibly brave to fight back against their teacher, who called them despicable just for believing in biological sex. Carol McGiffin, your Union Jackass nominee.
Well, it's Andrew Bailey, the Governor of the Bank of England, for just being completely useless and blaming everybody else, blaming people for asking for unreasonable pay rises for inflation. So, he's got to go.
All our fault, Carol. It's all our fault.
It's all our fault. Yeah, not him.
Not
for being
his
a
at all, even though
globalist
he's got one job.
monster.
One job. Ranal Jayawardena, your nominee for Union Jackass?
The Labour Party. I mean, they now say they want to hire a diversity czar in government at taxpayers' expense to get more women, more people of ethnic minorities, more people of working class backgrounds elected to Parliament. You know, we've got an Asian Prime Minister. We've had two, in recent succession, female Prime Ministers.
I think
three
the
overall.
other party, aren't they, that's never had a female
Exactly.
leader?
They're the ones that can't do it. It's their party's problem. They want you, the taxpayer, to pay for it. And that's on top of the £427 million every year spent on diversity people in the public sector. This is what's got to stop.
And Amy Nicol, your nominee for Union Jackass?
So I've been pretty gripped to the COVID inquiry so far, and I was absolutely shocked to see George Osborne's performance as he flat out denied the impact austerity had on COVID preparedness. And I think not only just COVID preparedness, but just the impact of austerity in general, which potentially killed more people than the pandemic. And he needs to take some responsibility for that ridiculous political decision.
You can show me the evidence for that ridiculous statistic
debt.
straight after the show. Amy Nicol, Ranal Jayawardena, Carol McGiffin, thank you so much. Oh, I've got to tell you who's won, though. I've got to tell you who's won. It's McGiff. It's McGiff. Of course it is. It's Andrew Bailey. He's the Union Jackass of the week for failing so spectacularly in his job and leaving us to pick up all the pieces, right? As Carol says today, he was saying it was our terrible fault for asking for pay rises, honestly. The guy needs to go. The guy needs to go. McGiff, Ranal, Amy Nicol, thank you so much for your company tonight. Thank you for your company all week. My goodness, so much news. I'm back Monday night from 9 p.m. Have an incredible weekend. Next up, though, it's the folks from Headliners. Good night. Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, you're with GB News. The top story tonight, the expedition company of the Titan submersible say they believe the pilot and 4 passengers on board are dead. OceanGate pilot and CEO Stockton Rush, UK citizens Hamish Harding, Shahzada Dawood and his son Suleiman, and French national Paul-Henri Nargeolet lost contact with their support ship on Sunday on their descent to the wreckage of the Titanic. The US Coast Guard saying their bodies may never be recovered. Remotely operated vehicles will remain on scene to help develop a timeline of what may have happened to the sub. Rear Admiral John Morga says the 5 pieces of debris found in the search for the missing sub earlier today were consistent with a catastrophic loss of pressure.
An ROV, or remote-operated vehicle, from the vessel Horizon Arctic discovered the tail cone of the Titan submersible approximately 1,600 feet from the bow of the Titanic on the seafloor. The ROV subsequently found additional debris. In consultation with experts from within the Unified Command, the debris is consistent with the catastrophic loss of the pressure chamber.
Well, here the Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly, paid tribute, tweeting, "Tragic news that those on the Titan submersible, including 3 British citizens, have been lost following an international search operation. The UK government is closely supporting the families affected and express our deepest condolences." Meanwhile, Hamish Harding's family have described him as one of a kind. In their statement, they said he was a guide, an inspiration, a support and a living legend. The family said he will leave a gap in their lives that can never be filled. Well, former CEO and co-founder of OceanGate, Guillermo Sondlein, has paid tribute to his former colleague and friend, Stockton Rush, tonight.
One of the most intelligent people I've ever met, a talented aerospace engineer, a passionate explorer. He was very committed to pushing the bounds of humanity's knowledge of the world's oceans, in large part so that we could preserve the ocean.
Well, today's other top story, the Bank of England increased the interest rate by 0.5 percentage point to 5%. That's the highest rate in 15 years as it tries to tackle ongoing inflation. The bank's governor, Andrew Bailey, says inflation is still too high and has to be dealt with. But he added, if we don't raise rates now, it could be worse later. It's the 13th time in a row the bank has increased the interest rate. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, said it's 13 years of government failure. The Prime Minister, though, said there was no easy fix and halving inflation was his top priority still. At Royal Ascot, one particular horse today caused a bit of an upset, winning the Norfolk Stakes at an odds of 150 to 1. Valiant Force, ridden by a jockey called Ross Ryan, becomes the longest-priced winner at Ascot in racing history. Meanwhile, one of the King and Queen's horses, too, Desert Hero, won the King George V Stakes in what's described as a photo finish. Charles and Camilla looking ecstatic as they watch their 18-1 thoroughbred claim victory. Congratulations to them. On TV, online, DAB+ radio and the TuneIn app. This is GB News.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Nick Dixon and I'm joined by the thinking man's gammon, Paul Cox. Let's see if we can see him in a minute. No, we got a wide shot though. And Scourge of Ofcom and centrist dads on Twitter, a renowned epidemiologist whose views should always be taken absolutely seriously. It's Dr. Lewis Schaefer.
Thank you very much. I am a doctor. I'm also a neurosurgeon and an airline pilot. I'm all those things.
Yeah, and in case anyone doesn't know what I'm referring to, Lewis had a few complaints from you at home, not really you, our beloved viewers, but the GB haters who felt that some of the comments you said were a bit outrageous. But they don't understand that Lewis is a comedian doing a sort of multi-decade living comedic performance that's ongoing. And I'm amazed they take you seriously, Lewis. I mean, this is a person who thinks that blood pressure isn't real, water dehydrates you, and then they're listening to your views seriously. Isn't that amazing?
You know what? I'm right about all those things. And when I'm discovered, they'll say, this guy wasn't even a comedian. He was a genius.
Paul, anything to add? Sorry to leave you out there.
How can you add to that?
Yeah, I know. It's annoying to have to play the straight man, isn't it, to Lewis? But
crazy.
He needs about at least 2 straight men.
But nobody complained. Nobody complained who were watching the show. They complained afterwards. When
True, absolutely. All right, thanks, Lewis. Let's do the front pages then. So, the Daily Mail has, of course, the big story. The Titanic claims 5 more lives. The Telegraph, US accused of turning against UK over NATO. The Guardian, recession fears as inflation forces bank to raise rates to 15-year high. The Financial Times, Bank of England takes interest rates to 5% in effort to put lid on inflation. The Sun, as Titan debris found, they had no chance. Of course, the submarine story again. The Daily Star, you big drip, some irrelevant nonsense. And those were your front pages. So let's start with that big story on the Daily Mail, Paul.
Yeah, it's tragic. Tragic, yet unfortunately inevitable news that they've found debris now that would suggest that the Titan is very likely to have imploded at depth. We don't know when or how. Or I mean, I only hope that it was relatively early on in the process, so they weren't sat in there for days and days contemplating the end. I mean, I'd like to say at this point, I don't think it was all in vain. There's been a lot of quite offensive fun poking this week, particularly due to the wealth of the chaps involved, which is entirely unnecessary for my money.
You mean things like Ash Sarkar, who said if the super rich can spend £250,000 on vanity jaunts 2.4 miles beneath the ocean, then they're not being taxed enough. Things like that.
The caring left, Nick, the caring left.
Shocking.
I would say, however, I'd like to say at this point, I don't think they've died in vain now. I mean, we need explorers like this. Now, they're all men, but it doesn't matter what gender they are. We need explorers like this. We need people who are going to take risks. This was a huge risk, you know, in hindsight, and not in hindsight, really, in reality. However, without this type of exploration, where do we get ourselves to, Nick?
Yeah, and that's the argument. Is it... Some people say, why, it's reckless, why did you do this? But other people say, no, it's the pioneering spirit that has got us this far. What do you think, Lewis?
I think, obviously, it's a tragedy. People have died, but there's lessons to be learned from this. First of all, like you said, they died within 2 hours of going down on the thing. Yeah, I think that's what they said. It was within 2 hours. So it wasn't... But... Here's the point. The point is, this guy Stockton Rush, who died aboard, he was the leader of the entire thing. So at least he went down with his ship, right? He said he didn't hire, a few years ago, he said he didn't hire 50-year-old white men with military experience because they weren't, quote unquote, inspirational. And he said that anybody can drive this sub, and he was actually being driven with a video game controller. Did you hear this?
Yes.
Okay. So basically, his wokeism killed him.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not sure I put it that bluntly, but I had heard that about the over 50-year-old white men, and that is unfortunate when people, you know, give preferential treatment to other people rather than it being based on experience. And obviously, in these kind of situations, experience is everything, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So,
I mean, this is the whole argument of meritocracy over diversity, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you can have, you should always have meritocracy no matter what.
And there was a man who lost his job. This is what I don't have it in front of me, but a man who lost his job, who made a complaint about the safety issues, and he was replaced by somebody much younger than him.
There was also a guy who was going to go on it, someone else who had money and was interested in going and signed up for it, but then said it's just too risky and pulled out. So imagine being that guy now. That must be a strange feeling to know that because he just said it's just too risky, and obviously he was proved right.
Like Seth MacFarlane on 9/11.
Yeah, but it has been discussing some of the response. I don't want to dwell on it too much, but the New Republic published this tweet. They said OceanGate CEO missing in Titanic sub had history of donating to GOP candidates. And this is where it gets really sick, the culture war.
It's irrelevant.
Snopes tried to blame it on Elon Musk. They said, oh, it's something to do with Starlink, and then they fact-checked it and they said it was true, and it was completely absurd. What does Starlink have to do with this? You can't get Starlink under the water. So the politicization of it has been very disturbing. I've even seen some lefties on this channel sort of... There's a real problem when people are successful and they do things that seem a bit eccentric. There's a real weird hatred, isn't there?
Well, absolutely, and I just don't think we should be glorifying the death of 5 humans, sorry. That's the point, yeah.
I think that will stop now that's happened, but in the build-up to it, it was very disturbing to see.
I hope so.
All right, very, very sad story. Shall we move on and do The Guardian, Lewis?
Yeah, well, this is every week or two or a couple of months that they raise the rates. And it says recession fears as inflation forces bank to raise rates to 15-year high. And they've gone up to 5%, which means Lewis Schaefer has to, believe it or not, I have a mortgage. I'm not going to tell you how I got it, but I have a mortgage.
That is shocking, actually. That's the most shocking thing you've ever said on this show. And you've said COVID doesn't exist, but the fact that Lewis Schaefer has a mortgage. Who looked at Lewis Schaefer, especially your shoes, and said, and your diet, and said, I trust this guy over 5 years.
But you want to know something that I find very interesting, and the people who died in that ship, those ships, right? I'm equating it to the people. Interest rates have been raising. But for 10 years or more, longer than 10 years, they stayed flat at like basically nothing. Basically the government was giving money.
Money was free.
Money was free. And now it's gone up, and I think it was an inevitability. Inflation was caused because the government printed too much money. That's entirely where inflation comes from, basically.
Yeah, I mean, and there's all kinds of exacerbating factors. Many people say Brexit.
Yeah.
Others will say the war, the supply side issues, Bank of England quantitative easing, which you're sort of hinting at. And Sunak here is saying, Sunak sought to reassure workers by arguing he was totally 100% on it in his central mission to ease the pressure on living costs. I mean, lol, come on, Paul.
Well, it's... first of all, we were artificially low for 13 years. We were very cavalier about keeping it low. And it's a shame we haven't been so cavalier in our interest rate rises. Now, that sounds harsh because, obviously, the more you rise interest rates, the more it impacts people. However, the orthodoxy of increasing interest rates is to slow the market down.
Yeah.
Therefore, you are trying to turn off the purchasers' spending will to bring down inflation. That hasn't worked because we're stuck at 8.7%.
Yeah.
However, the reason it hasn't worked is because we crept up in these small increments. Had they gone, and I know this could be disastrous, but we're there anyway. Had they gone from 1.5% to 5% in one hit or two hits, I think we would be down at 4% inflation.
But surely that would spook the markets. I mean, Liz Truss tried to do a tiny tax reduction.
I think this just tells us more about who's controlling the markets.
Right.
It's not us, and it's not. I mean, I think the Bank of England look foolish. Continually look foolish at the moment. They've got no control over this. There was another rise to 5%. They have no idea when this is going to stop now, and at some point we're going to start seeing recessions.
OK. Yeah, well, lots of people are blaming Andrew Bailey. From my experience with people at the Bank of England, they'll probably continue to blame Brexit forever. But let's move on and do the Financial Times poll, and they've got a story about the Church of England. Yes.
So, Anglican Church announces its endowment and pension funds plan to sell out of 11 big companies, including Shell, BP, Exxon and Total. Now, after concluding, none were aligned with efforts to halt global warming. So this is an attempt to green capitalism. It would some sort of ethical capitalism. At the end of the day, the church is very good at investing. The church, these endowments, I mean, it's The endowments themselves are billions. I think it's 3.2 billion in the pension scheme and somewhere in the order of 20 billion in the other endowment. They're not stupid.
Yeah.
But this feels stupid to me.
Do you know what was surprising about this to me, Paul, is at first that the church was investing in all these oil companies, and now that they're stopping, both were surprised. I just don't see the church as doing that. But of course, Welby was in the oil industry for 11 years. But what's really, it's sort of, you don't sort of imagine the Church of England, in my naive, quaint way, I don't imagine them being like investors in oil. But then also the move against it, because it goes against the Paris Climate Agreement and it goes against their faith, which really means their faith in climate change, which seems to be the Church of England's real faith these days. What do you think, Lewis?
What I think is, you know, if the Church of England really believed in this stuff, maybe they should stop heating the churches. Maybe they should stop heating the churches.
They're always pretty cold when I go in.
Yeah, well, you know what? Maybe they should, you know, I've been into the in Southwark Cathedral and in the Southwark Diocese of Southwark, and the building is heated and cooled in the wintertime, and maybe they should make a commitment. Maybe Marcus, whatever the guy's, Justin Welby, not Marcus Welby, maybe he should stop having his house heated and let him, you know what I mean?
Good point.
We need...
Walk the walk, Welby. What? You know, don't just be all mouth and no trousers.
Just say, you know what, we don't need oil. We don't need whatever it's called. And, I mean, because they call it fossil fuels. Well, because, you know...
This is the guy they're complaining about to Ofcom. He doesn't know anything.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
I'm actually a petro engineer, fully... I'm not trained.
Fully unemployed.
I'm an unemployed petrochemical engineer. If you listen to me, no, I think I made a very good point for comedic effect. I wasn't being mean, but I do believe it.
You smashed it, Lewis. Now let's have a quick look at the Daily Star, if I may, Lewis.
Yeah, well, this is one of those stories. It's I mean, the Daily Star actually is, believe it or not, is a very good newspaper. It just has a horrible front page.
Right, but when you get inside, it's all deep think pieces.
It's a lot of news.
Have you ever seen beyond the front page, Lewis?
I'm looking at these words.
There's a lot of things going on.
I'm looking at the words here. Anyway.
What's the story about, Lewis? Just for a laugh, let's just read out what it's about. Should we try that?
It says that 1.6 million pounds a year Thames, not Thames, water board.
Thank you.
It just shows I'm British, just like you. I pronounce it Thames.
Yeah,
Thames,
the absolute
water
basic.
boss blames her leaking pipes on a hot summer and a wet winter. She's made excuses why we might need to go into whatchamacallit, where they control the water. But the fact is that Thames Water and the water system they hold the record for the best and longest excuses for why they provide shoddy service. They always blame it on the Victorian pipes.
Yeah.
Like they haven't had over 100 and something years to fix those pipes. And if the roads break down, they don't say, we're sorry, it's the Roman roads that have...
Do you know what else they've known for 100 years?
Yeah.
What the British weather's going to do in summer, autumn and winter.
Incredible.
This is mental.
I know, she blamed hot summer, wet autumn and cold winter. There's a funny line here when she admitted that this is Chief Executive Sarah Bentley, and she admitted that it would meet this year's targets. Now I realise that was a typo immediately. Imagine a British company so good, like, we're only going to meet the targets this year, guys. We haven't exceeded them. But of course it's that they would not meet them, and that then normality was resumed.
Can I add?
Very quickly, yes.
Very quickly. It rains half as much in this country as in this city, in London, as it does in New York.
Yeah.
Half as much.
And less than Paris. It's paradise, London. All right, that's it for part one. But coming up, Windrush, woke capitalism, and why immigration is too low. Lol. See you in a minute.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I